found for maybe 10 minutes after that. So it slows down the entire network so everybody can kind of keep up. So it's actually a way of making sure everybody can keep up with what's happening on the network. And I don't see it as a bad thing at all.
That sounds like miners stealing money for pretending to do the work of verifying transactions and just getting paid for nothing.
The only other option is when one pool finds a block and the other pool hasn't received the entire block and hasn't validated it, is for them to not mine at all during that period. So rather than not mining at all, they still continue to mine. And if they find a block within, let's say, that 10-second window, they mine an empty block. So the only other option to mining an empty block is to not mine at all. And so I think it would be better for them to mine that empty block
from the pool of miner rewards. If you're not performing useful work, you are harming the network. They're getting paid.
That's still useful work because they're adding more work onto the tip of the blockchain, which makes the blockchain just that much more difficult to go back and rewrite.
Yeah, Roger has a mining company, and he's apparently good buddies with a guy who makes mining equipment. I found that it's very hard to make these types of ethical arguments against biased understanding.
Make it again, and I'll try to understand it, because I don't think I understood where the theft was coming in. I think I heard you use the word stealing.
Your model is that it's no big deal that this block happened because for some reason, it's better that the network be slow. And then you also said that we're also going to instantly find another block at the same time. And I'm not sure that either of those two things is actually the case. And if those two things...
These empty blocks are happening, or 99% of the time, is when it's found right after another block. And that's, if you look at these empty blocks, they're found at almost identical time to another block. And so that node hasn't received the full block, and they're not able to mine on top of that, other than just mining on the header. So that's why you're seeing these empty blocks.
But someone's getting paid to mine on a header when they could have just not, right?
They could have not mined at all. That's the option.
Right.
Either they don't mine at all, or they mine on the header for that 10-second period.
I'm okay with it.
I'll tell you another reason. So like the Bitmain S7s, for example, if they all of a sudden, when they have 1,000+ watts going into one of these mining machines, and if the internet cuts off or they stop mining all of a sudden, they have a tendency to literally catch on fire and burst into flames, and that's a big problem in a data center. So just from a technical standpoint, it's not feasible for these machines to stop mining for those 10-second periods, because you don't want them to catch on fire. And
that sounds like
someone that's involved with the data centers for these. Yeah, we try to avoid having fires in the data centers. Especially electrical fires.
Yeah. So my point is, you could be entirely correct, and Gavin Anderson could be entirely correct, and the network could operate with larger blocks now, and it would lower the fees for a while, and maybe if lower fees increased adoption, which I don't think is the case, then you'd be right. We should do it.
Increased adoption? Did I hear you say that?
Well, I think that we had a bunch of transactions on the network, and then they disappeared the second the SegWit 2x agreement was signed. And I think that someone, perhaps a miner, was just pumping transactions into blocks to make it look like we needed to have resolution immediately, because it cost them less, because the fees that they paid to mine those transactions into those blocks, they were getting on the other end anyway as block rewards and as fees on the other side. So to me, because of the timing, when those transactions disappeared, I don't believe that those were real transactions that were filling up the blocks. And let me tell you something else. You talk about how good I don't even know what you want to call it. You want to call it BCC, BCH, Bcash? You choose.
Probably not Bcash.
Are you serious? I thought everyone else loved Bcash.
Only on the censored forum where there was a actual campaign to manipulate.
The Dalniks, the head dev, chose Bcash as his name and pushed it. You got to get that guy in line. I'll choose whatever name you like. Okay.
Yeah, Bitcoin Cash sounds fine.
Bitcoin Cash. Okay. So Bitcoin Cash does these things, which you say are awesome. The blocks are empty. And when I say empty, I mean they're under a hill.
A little bit.
Go ahead. Okay. Well, I don't want to.
You can feel free to talk about Bitcoin Cash, but I'd like to give my own opinion and thoughts about Bitcoin Cash.
I retract my statement regarding Roger's likeness or not of that thing. Bitcoin Cash is a hard fork of Bitcoin, which has really low fees because it has really empty blocks. The last blocks before this call were under 100 kilobytes each. And this is with an 8 megabyte limit. And this is with blocks that are being found 5 to 6 times faster than they should be, just giving free money to the miners. So if Roger's right and transaction fees are the important thing, then you can use almost any other cryptocurrency in the planet, because not that many people seem to be like attacking them. So they all seem to work pretty good.
If I can jump in here.
Sure.
I think transaction fees are important, but they're not the most important thing. The most important thing is the network effect and the amount of merchants and users and wallets and all this infrastructure built up around the world. And that's why the US dollar will be so incredibly hard to displace, because there's all these banks and mobile apps and, just cash registers and vending machines, and just an absolutely staggering amount of infrastructure is already developed around the entire world to use the US dollar. When it comes to cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin has the most amount of infrastructure already in place around the world for people to use it. That's an incredibly hard thing to overcome. Bitcoin Cash has been around for about 3 weeks. Bitcoin Cash changed the underlying economic code of Bitcoin with their emergency difficulty adjustment thing that I definitely have some concerns about myself. But I don't think it's the fees that's the most important thing. I think it's the network effect. So Go ahead, Richard.
So hash rate matters, right? Because that's the reason we don't have 51% attacks.
Hash rate's what secures the network, yeah.
All right. Well, the Bitcoin Cash fork, I'm going to say, stole something like 2 of 7 to 3 of 7 exahash.
By steal? Can you define what you mean by steal in this case?
Well, in this case, they pretended to give a lot of people a thing, which when they went to dump it on market, they couldn't, because they had to wait 20 confirmations, 16 to 20, unless you're on Hitbit, and you could do it in 2, which they accepted a huge risk because the chain could have got rolled back. So they dumped this on a bunch of people, which also, for some people in certain jurisdictions, are going to cause tax consequences. And then if you weren't plugged into the internet at the time, you didn't know you were given this thing. And now you're being forced to make a decision as to whether to hold, and by holding, increase the economic value, and by increasing the economic value, pay the miners to screw over the network that you signed up for. So when everyone got
go ahead.
When everyone got these free coins and couldn't dump them on exchange and couldn't drive the price to zero, it gave existing SHA-256 Bitcoin miners an economic incentive to leave and thereby attack the network that they were originally participating in, which was the real Bitcoin. So all the people that didn't dump on site the Trojan horse coins allowed the market value to float, gave the miners an incentive to switch, slowed down block times in Bitcoin, reduced security in Bitcoin. And this was done with a Wix website, a single developer, and some miners that were interested in profit. That's gross. That's bad. If a single developer with a Wix website and a single dev can steal half the Bitcoin mining power. What's wrong with a Wix website? Well, it's just another centralized point of failure. The Wix admin can go in there and change the download link for the wallet and steal everyone's keys. Which, by the way,
that true of just about any website hosting.
Yeah,
the
but
DNS server could point to some other website that's a clone with malware for download. I don't think that's a problem with Wix. That's just a problem with the internet, period.
No, it's not, because the more people you share the ability to write with, then you multiply your risk. So if you